Hi, continuing today's thought, and today we're going to be talking about health. Now, you may have heard that Robert F. Kennedy has been confirmed to be the Director of Health and Human Services. And, well, I had my doubts about him when he first came on the scene. Well, when he first came on the scene was when he was running for president. I definitely did not support RFK. I'll call him RFK. I did not support him for president. But then we started reading about Trump speaking to RFK about making him head of HHS. And I have to, well, the more I listened to him, the more I thought that he made a lot of sense. And I'm now a strong supporter of him because this is it's a big subject with me because, well, for one reason, because I was well, I won't say I was a fat kid, but I was an overweight kid. And I had it caused me problems when I was young, which is something I should talk about for a minute now, because I've been wanting to do a thought on the absence of shame in our society and the way it relates to this. What I mean by shame is that when people would do things that were not good, you would call them out on it. People would complain, even make fun of them, and they would change because they would be embarrassed, humiliated, and they would change. And that's what happened when I was a kid. The other kids made fun of me because I was overweight, not, as I said, not fat, but that really illustrates what I'm talking about, because I was never fat, but I don't think I was, but I was, chubby, I guess we'll say, and other kids made fun of me. But now today, this is what really distresses me, and one of the reasons I'm such a strong supporter of Donald Trump. And this is something I have to say, I hate to be critical of my fellow Southerners. I was born in Detroit. I grew up in Detroit. I lived in New York for about a little over 40 years, and I moved to Tennessee. And one of the first things I noticed when I moved to Tennessee was the number of fat, I mean really fat, I mean overweight, I mean obese people that I was seeing. This is one part, though I went back last year to visit New York, and I'm starting to see some people being, overweight, really overweight people there, but it's nothing, I guess, because people, they're liberals. One thing you talk about liberals, healthy diets and health. Well, RFK is a liberal, and that's one part where they have it right, because now I see all these fat kids and these little puffballs just wandering around. I know what their lives are going to be like as far as health would be. I avoided all that because as I said, I got shamed into losing weight about the time I was 17, and I went on this high protein diet. It was called the Doctor's Quick Loss Diet. It was all the rage at the time, but then I lost weight and I got really thin. I'm not so thin now, but I'm not fat. And I watch my weight and I see, and it pains me. It's bad enough seeing adults, but I see these kids and these children, and it's going to affect them all their lives. And I say to myself, how can these kids be so fat? And one of the reasons is because they're probably not being shamed, because they're all fat. And if everybody's fat, then no one's going to make fun of you for being fat. I mean, they're not all fat, but so many, I guess you can't do that, or you can't, well, they have a word for it. Our liberal friends have a word for it, fat shaming. So you're supposed to look at people like, Lizzo and say fat is beautiful. We're putting, I think there was a fat woman on, I know there was, on a Sports Illustrated cover, the swimsuit cover, which was really ridiculous, and fat models, and I see it to me, it's just not, to show you how bad it is. There's a commercial I see every so often. There's a little jingle that sings, and somebody sings, a woman usually sings, and it's Jardian, I think, a little pill with a big story to tell. It's for treating diabetes, for lowering your A1C, and the woman singing she's fat. She's fat, and a lot of the people, I think just about all the people, she sings and there's groups around her, and maybe an office setting or an outdoors or something, and they're fat too, and that shows you because it's fat people. Fat people put you at risk for diabetes. That's why all these fat people are in. It's not trying to make fat people look good, as in say these a Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover. It's because they're marketing to fat people because it puts you at risk for getting diabetes. That's how bad it is. And then they need health care, and our tax dollars pay for it. And the reason, and I have to give credit to RFK because he wants to fight this. He sees this. He talks about not just obesity in kids, but poor health in all of us. And I can say I am about the same age as RFK, maybe a little bit. I think I'm a couple of years younger, but I can tell you that when I was a kid, it wasn't like that. Kids, except for me, kids were almost all thin and healthy and strong. And I would say, well, it's interesting in a way. He doesn't talk about this enough, and I don't know why, because his uncle was a physical, and he exercises. You can tell by looking at him. I mean, if you ever seen a shirtless photo of him, he's in great shape for somebody his age and my age. But his JFK, John F. Kennedy, when he was president, the whole country, because of him, he used to play touch football on the White House lawn. And we were on a big health kick. And so everybody to play sports. I played a lot of sports when I was a kid. I did, football, baseball, just about soccer, just about everything, everything, even hockey for a while. And just one winter when there was some kind of storm and the school playground froze completely over. So we all went out and bought ice skates, and we played hockey. And I almost killed myself. I'm not graceful at all. And I'll do it aside. I'll tell you sort of how ungraceful I am. I went skiing. I wanted to try skiing, right? So I went on this ski trip with some group, and it was a ski trip, and I put the skis on, and the rope thing took me up to, there wasn't these seats that you see in the movies, a rope, and you hold on to a tow rope. So I grabbed the rope, and it just pulled me over. I fell flat on my face. I finally got the hang of it, got to the top of the hill, and I started skiing down. And when I got to the bottom of the hill, I found out that I couldn't stop. They taught us how to stop, but I couldn't do it. And so unfortunately, I tried skydiving too. Fortunately, the lesson about how to land without breaking your legs, I got that part right, but almost got lost in a cornfield as far as, you can steer the parachutes. Anyways, so I'm coming down this hill, and there's two people on skis talking to each other, which is lucky because they were close enough, far enough away because of their skis. I went right between them, going I don't know how fast, and then practically, I finally tipped myself over before I went into a wooden fence. So I'm not the best one to talk about sports. But anyways, RFK, he sees this problem, not just obesity, but also this great increase in autism in kids. I think he said don't quote me on this, but I think he said 1 in 44 kids now has autism. And I have to give some credit. Now but he also talks about our unhealthy food, all these additives in food. And this is where I have to give credit to liberals again, because when I was a kid, you'd buy a can of something or a box of cornflakes, or a box of, say, Frosted Flakes or anything, and it would say it was cornflakes, it just said cornflakes. If it was peas, it just said peas. If it was SpaghettiOs or something, spaghetti or Chef Boyardee spaghetti or anything in a can, it just said the name of what was in the can, but you didn't have what you have today. You did not have this, well, number one, a list of the ingredients so you know what's in the can or the package, number one. And number two, these nutrition labels that you see on everything, they didn't exist when I was a kid. So I was in in a way, I was lucky because our kid, which is an irony, because we didn't have the nutrition labels, we didn't have the ingredient list, and yet we were healthier in my youth than today, and than kids are today, or even adults are today. So he's on the right track, and I'm going to show you. He just, as I said, he was just appointed head of HHS, and he gave an introductory speech to the staff, and I'm going to show you a portion of that. Now, the entire speech is a little over 20 minutes. I'm linking to the speech in the description. You should all watch it. It's definitely worth it, but I'm just going to play one little section to talk about, because there's something else that he has a very good handle on, which is he's been criticizing for saying no vaccines. Vaccines are all bad. Nobody should get vaccinated. That's not true. And what he's really saying, as you'll hear him say himself in a moment, which makes perfect sense to me, is to look into this stuff, that he wants unbiased science. And you might say, well, isn't science unbiased? And because that's what science is supposed to be. And as he says partway through the speech, I don't know if it'll be in the section that I'm going to show you, but that results should be repeatable. That's how you test a theory. You have a hypothesis, and then you test it. And you're always, this is what Elon Musk said the other day when he was interviewed, if you saw him with Sean Hannity being interviewed, Trump and Musk, and saying that, because you always say about climate change, don't question the science, don't question the science. You always question the science. That's what science is about. Isaac Newton, his 4 laws of motion, that was the conventional wisdom. Everybody knew that was just accepted. Then Albert Einstein comes along with a theory of relativity, and there was this young guy, I think he was 25 at the time, in 21 or 20, I think 25, in the Swiss, some guy in a Swiss patent office, and he just publishes this mathematical theory, of relativity. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but the idea is that, because I would probably bore myself with all the details, to be frank, but anyways, when he published that theory, there were a group of 5 scientists published an article saying why Einstein was wrong, why it was completely bunk, his theory, and well, who was right, Einstein or the 5 scientists? When when Galileo said that he was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for saying this, when he said that the earth revolves around the sun, the earth is not the center of the universe. But who was right, Galileo or the entire Catholic Church and his society at his time? You always question the science, and that is all he's saying. He said, if I'm wrong, I'm willing to accept that I'm wrong if I'm proven wrong, and this is going to turn into a long, because these are all recent events that just happened, but you remember Dr. Deborah Birx, she was one of during the COVID crisis, when we had all this lockdown and everything, and Dr. Fauci, and then she was getting famous for wearing a scarf every time she appeared. Anyway, she just published a book, and she was just interviewed, and she admitted that we did not all have to get vaccinated. Number one, only people at high risk. That if you were somebody like, I guess, my age, so I got vaccinated, that if you're over 65, but if you're a child, you didn't need of course you should get polio vaccine. I was vaccinated for polio, but not, and these days at my age, I was vaccinated for, shingles, and I get the flu shot every year, but you didn't have to. There was no reason to vaccinate and separate all these kids and put them in these little plastic dividers, between their desks in the schoolroom, or just close the school completely. She says that, well, that was all wrong. That was not necessary. But this is the part that really galled me, because she said remember this lockdown stuff started with her and Dr. Fauci and Anthony Fauci and the president, going, well, it was mainly the vice president, Mike Pence, talking about he would always appear with her. remember 2 weeks to slow the spread, and 2 weeks, 2 weeks turned into 2 months, and then, I don't know if it was 2 years, but it was quite a long time. And she admitted in her book that just came out that it was all a ruse, that she always from the beginning, and I assume Fauci agreed with her, that they wanted a long-term lockdown, which is what we eventually had. But she said if they proposed that right away, the people would rebel. They wouldn't do it. Trump wouldn't do it. So they started out, we'll start out with 2 weeks to slow the spread. And then once those 2 weeks go by and people are into the habit of being locked down or wearing masks and all this garbage, well, then they would be more willing to just continue. That's what you call biased science. So Kennedy, getting back to RFK now, he's just saying, I just want unbiased science, and if it shows I am wrong about something, then I will admit I'm wrong. So I've set it up well enough for you. I've said my piece. Just that I accept. Well, let's hear from him, and then I'll have a final thought.
That will make HHS again the envy of the world. Let me say one more thing about politicization, and this is personal. As you know, I've come through a very highly polarized confirmation process. The fog of narrative warfare has made it hard to get a sense of who I am and what I believe and what I represent. A lot of times when I read these articles characterizing me, I think to myself, I wouldn't want to work for that guy either. So, since we all are here together, I have a request to make from you, my new colleagues. Let's start a relationship by letting go of any preconceptions that you may have about me, and let's start from square one. Let's establish a mutual intention to work toward what we all care about, the health of the American people. In return, I want to make a promise to all of you. It's also about preconceptions. I'll start by acknowledging that throughout my career, I've asked a lot of difficult questions, and I've come to a lot of unpopular conclusions. I'm going to keep asking those kind of questions. What I promise to you now is to hold my preconceived answers lightly. I promise to be willing to be wrong. I promise to listen to all the stakeholders, all the parties to the conversation, including the ones, especially the ones with whom I've disagreed in the past. I promise to keep an open mind toward every possibility and every contingency. I hope you will all join me in this commitment, because the health of our people is a lot more important than being right or being vindicated. We can start right now. Last Thursday, President Trump signed an executive order to establish the MAHA Commission to study what has caused the precipitous decline in American health over the past 2 generations. So we will convene representatives of all viewpoints to study the causes for the drastic rise in chronic disease. Some of the possible factors we will investigate were formerly taboo or insufficiently scrutinized. The childhood vaccine schedule, electromagnetic radiation, glyphosate, other pesticides, ultra-processed foods, artificial food additives, SSRI and other psychiatric drugs, PFAs, PFOAs, microplastics. Nothing is going to be off limits. Whatever belief or suspicion I have expressed in the past, I'm willing to subject them all to the scrutiny of unbiased science. That is going to be our template, unbiased science. That's something that will make us all proud of this agency and of our role in restoring American health. Let's commission research that will satisfy all the stakeholders once and for all. Let's use protocols that we all agree on in advance and not alter the outcomes of studies when they're halfway through and that they look inconvenient. Let's all depoliticize these issues and reestablish a common ground for action and renew the search for existential truth with no political impediments and no preconceptions.
That's what I'm talking about, what you just heard. And as I said, I linked to the entire speech, and I think it's about 21 minutes or something. It's well worth your time to listen to it. But he is on the right track. I support exactly what he's doing. We should all do that. It's really time to just have more food. Well, number one, people are free to buy whatever they want. We got to do something about all these additives. I read a label, and I'm going to throw in something else here. I'm going to criticize the Republicans really strongly. And I'm looking at you, Marco Rubio, or I was. You're not a senator anymore. You're the Secretary of State, and you're doing a really great job. But when you're a senator from Florida, and this is a beef I've always had, you go and you buy anything that's got sweetener in it, and it always says, well, you look carefully. When I buy ice cream, for instance, I always look to see if there's sugar or corn syrup, because I don't want corn syrup. And one of the worst things is high fructose corn syrup, which is a manufactured product. Sugar, at least, is a natural product that you should not eat too much of it, obviously. But the point is that the reason you see all this corn syrup is because sugar is expensive, and the reason it's expensive is because of subsidies that are given to the sugar industry in Florida, which Rubio always supported. And I can't think of, I'm sure Rick Scott does too, though I never checked, but or else why do we always have these sugar subsidies? First of all, why should we be subsidizing sugar, which, as RFK is going to show us, if you don't already know, is not a healthy ingredient for you? And I guess in a way you could say that, well, that would make sense to keep it expensive if you want people to do it, but then make it even more expensive. But the reason you have corn syrup is, if you look at a commodity table, if you look at commodities, copper and platinum and wheat, all the commodities. If you look at sugar, there are actually, wheat there's kinds of wheat, but the copper is copper, and tin is, silver is silver, and cattle is cattle. But there's two kinds of sugar. There's domestic sugar and there's world sugar. And world sugar is a sugar that every other country in the world uses, and domestic sugar is a sugar that can only be used in the United States, and that's because the U.S. sugar is much more expensive than the sugar everywhere else. In fact, if you know, like I said, don't drink too much soda. It's not good for you. I rarely drink soda, or as we called it when I was growing up in Michigan, pop. But you can go into, definitely you could in New York, and here too, there's a local store. You can go market, and you can buy Mexican Coke, okay? What's the difference between Mexican Coke and American Coke? American Coke uses corn syrup. Mexican Coke uses actual sugar. But as I usually do, or often do, I get off the track. So just get back on the track that we have to do something. We can't have people, and a lot of it comes from education. Oh, and I'll throw another thing. I don't know if he's responsible for this. I know Trump wants to do it. I think he just issued an executive order that the SNAP payments, the welfare payments that we give for food. I didn't know this, but you can buy potato chips and soda pop with it. So it's an executive order, I assume, that with your food stamps, you can only buy healthy food. You can't use it or will not be able, and Congress should codify this into law. So I don't know why a future president would want to do this, but so a future president can't just simply change that law and let you buy anything you want. You can only buy healthy food which is often cheaper, but healthy food with your food stamps. In fact, I'll throw out, since I'm on a streak today, my last story talked about healthy food. When I came to New York, I was poor. I was so poor I could barely afford, any food. And all I could eat, I read that rice and beans are good for you, that together, separately they don't, but together they form what they call complete protein, and you can live very well on rice and beans. I did it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and actually I got to like it. That's what I discovered when I moved to New York. Cuban rice and beans. There was a little hole in the wall, or a small corner Cuban place, and they had the rose con pollo, which I really loved, that I'd never heard of before in Detroit. But the yellow rice with the red beans with the sauce, and it was so, and you get a chicken leg with it, and it was so good. But the point is, I said I was overweight when I came, I gained weight again. But when I came to New York, I lost a lot of weight, and I was the healthiest I ever was. I was just fine on rice and beans, and that's another thing with food stamps. I don't think we're obligated to keep people healthy, but we're not, we're not obligated to make them have exciting dinners every time or whatever. Rice and beans are easily affordable. That's what I did. I mean, I got giant bag of rice, and I got the giant cans of beans, and I was fine. So there you go. So I guess I'm going to end it now before I think of something else to talk about. Thanks for stopping by. I'd love to see your comments. If you could subscribe, that would really be great. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit from it. But most of all, come back and see me again. I would love to see all of you again, and hopefully with a shorter video. And until I do see all of you again, bye.